Hello, I'm Dave Callaway, and welcome to this edition of Waycross Magazine. Today we have the dedication ceremony of the Don Berryhill Nature Trail and Don Berryhill Day in Ware County, Georgia. Our ceremony took place at the amphitheater outside Southern Forest World, and we have that complete ceremony, and we hope you enjoy it. If you have some programming ideas, you can give me a call at 285-1817. Thank you, and you have a great week.
We still have a few people coming in, but I want to go ahead and welcome you to Southern Forest World and Southern Forest World Environmental Center. Welcome on a cool Saturday morning. We got a really good crowd to come out for a really special occasion. And of course, that's to recognize Don Berryhill in works he's done for decades. Don and I have been friends a long time. He's a true environmentalist, a true conservationist, and a true teacher. Within 30 seconds this morning coming up, he said, "Hey Barry, how you doing? I got something I need you to do." So I've got my assignment already. I'll turn the program back over to Dr. Smith, but we really appreciate you coming, and we really appreciate Don and all the great things he's done for a lot of people. And most importantly, he's a true friend. Thank you.
I'd also like to thank y'all for coming out this morning. It is rather chilly, so we want to kind of stick with the program so y'all don't kind of turn into icicles and you can get up and start moving around. One of the things, when I think of Mr. Berryhill, I was one of those teachers that he was trying to teach science to, so we could make sure that the kids enjoyed science. And I think he told me something like to where we wouldn't ruin science for kids. I mean, I might admit that might be a misquote, but I'm sure that was what he meant. But through our training and everything, I also met our speaker today, Mr. Phil Murphy. And Phil started off working at Kennedy Space Center. And Dr. Woodard and Don, as the science people that they are, found out that there was a science guy down there that had the same passion for science that they did. And so he worked with them for a while, and then the next thing he knew, he was recruited to come to work at Okefenokee RESA with Don and Dr. Woodard. And so he arranged a lot of trips with Mr. Berryhill and Mr. Murphy, and took a lot of teachers. We would go actually to Kennedy Space Center in addition to Broxton Rocks and Epcot and everything. But one of my favorite things is when we went to Kennedy, we actually got to stand under the crawler that moved the space shuttle to the launch pad. And you know, on TV it doesn't quite look that big, but all of us were standing underneath it. And after Mr. Murphy worked at RESA for a while, he went to become principal at Bacon County. Then he became the principal in Appling County at the high school, and then he became the the superintendent in Bacon County, and he's just retired not that long ago. And Mr. Murphy is going to come this morning and give us a little insight into the Don Berryhill, the man.
Thank you, and what an honor it is to be invited to say a few words on behalf of Mr. Berryhill today. For those who know me, sometimes I get excited and talk pretty long, but you're in luck today because I forgot my jacket and it's cool out here, so I'll keep it short. 40 years ago, a chemistry teacher assistant principal had a vision. His vision was to bring science education or expand it to all the kids in southeast Georgia. He wrote for and applied and received a federal grant to start a science curriculum initiative. That man was Dr. Woodard. During Sunday school, Dr. Woodard was talking to a Sunday school class about his grant, and he was needing somebody to help him with it, and Don happened to be in the Sunday school class and was interested and talked to Dr. Woodard about it. So Dr. Woodard and Don started an innovative program in South Georgia under a federal grant to work on science curriculums, to try and teach environmental education, to try and help the students in Southeast Georgia learn more about science, particularly nature and the environment. The grant, however, only lasted 3 years. The program, however, was so successful that it caught the state's eye, and it's a time when the state cared about science education and put money in science education and realized the need for science and technology. So they started a program called CESA, the Cooperative Education Services Agency, and the focus was to help make elementary teachers better science teachers, to help improve science curriculum, and to do hands-on programs with students, taking them out in nature and learn about nature. Don's expertise, of course, happened to be with nature. He was Mr. Okefenokee Swamp Man. When we think about what he did with CESA and then eventually RESA, in 1986 I think it changed to Regional Education Services Agency. If you ask most people what RESA is now, they think of the building over there, and they're all over the state, and they do everything with education, from learning more about teaching reading and math and working on curriculum and assessing teachers and evaluating teachers and training people with degrees to be teachers. The roots of it, however, is science. It started right here in Waycross with Dr. Woodard's grant and Don Berryhill as the science person. I was fortunate enough to be able to work with him from 1985 till 1991. Not as a science person, however. I was housed in a trailer back behind the building with a lady named Gail Aberson and Peggy Brantley and Mary Frances Newton and Lillian Tanner and Janet Monroe. We had a job that was quite unpopular. That's why we were housed in a trailer back behind the building. We assessed beginning teachers for certification. We were the external data collectors who would come in and sit there with the stern faces and mark beginning teachers and read their portfolios, and they'd have to go through a rigorous program to be certified. However, science was my thing. I was a science teacher in Maryland for 5 years, was fortunate enough to get hired at Kennedy Space Center to be an aerospace education specialist, and traveled Georgia and Florida doing aerospace programs and teaching courses through colleges. Knowing Don Berryhill was a science guy, many times I'd sneak out of the office and they'd find me in Don's office and we'd just be sitting there talking about science. Although I was the rocket man and he was the alligator man, we got along fabulously because NASA does an awful lot with environmental education through Landsat satellites and trying to understand the Earth and nature and the environment better. Particularly remember one day in January 1986, Don and I and Warren Scholar were standing around the TV watching a shuttle launch. Unfortunately, it was the Challenger launch on a cold January day, and as soon as it exploded, I can remember standing there and just turning to Don and Warren saying, "Damn solid rocket boosters." And it turned out that's what it was. But we had many very good experiences with science. He would help me organize the trips that the class that he had teaching science education to teachers to go to Kennedy Space Center. Fortunately, I had enough contacts where we'd get kind of behind the scene tours, and Reba was talking about we'd drive the bus right up on pad 39B, which was a shuttle launch pad. Couldn't get out of the bus on the pad, but then the bus would go around and drive in the flame trench, and we got out and we could feel the walls of the launch complex where the fire of the rocket motors would actually melt the concrete and glaze it over, and got to walk under the crawler and just do some things that normal people never got to do, but makes an impact on a science teacher or an elementary teacher to be a better science teacher. The biggest impact on science in this area, however, wasn't the trips that we organized or the classes, it was Don Berryhill. When I think of all the kids who've been to the rocks at Pridgeon, all the kids who've been to Okefenokee Swamp, and they all have one thing in common. Don Berryhill is the man that organized the trip, took them there, told them all about the rocks. If you don't know what the rocks are, it's near Pridgeon, which is near West Green, which is near Douglas, where there's about a 20-foot waterfall. Most people don't even know there's a waterfall in South Georgia as flat as it is. But it's a rock outcropping where there's a stream that's cut a little canyon through the rocks, and it's got a 16 to 20-foot waterfall. And it's just an amazing place to take kids to teach them about a unique environment, certainly unique to South Georgia. And Don I would just enthrall the kids in talking about what makes us so unique and the plants here that don't live anywhere else in the world. He being Mr. Swamp Man, and his stories and the things that he'd tell the kids about the Okefenokee Swamp, I just think in the 40 years, how many people has he touched? How many kids learned a little more about science to be better stewards of our environment through the work of Don Berryhill? In all, he has touched many students. I'm sure many of them went on to be science teachers due to his influence and his enthusiasm for science. And we certainly owe a debt of deep gratitude for Don Berryhill and what he's done for science and the kids of South Georgia. Don, it's a great honor for me to be able to say these things about somebody who's had such an impact. I only wish we could kind of turn things back to more emphasis on science coming from the state and the feds. Seems like so much of schooling now is testing and math and testing and reading, and it's gotten to the point where science teachers are almost scared to do labs because they know there's a big test out there and they got to teach that stuff so they can get the answers right, rather than teaching them with the hands and touching in the labs. Don, you certainly filled that space up, and I know you'll continue to do it for many years. Reba, thank you for asking me to speak, and I just want to give a big round of applause to Don Berryhill for all he's done for science in South Georgia.
He didn't even tell you that the beginning of this nature trail was through Dr. Al Woodard and Don and the Okefenokee Heritage Center, because somewhere on our earliest plans we said we needed a nature trail. And the call came from Dr. Woodard, said Don Berryhill is already thinking about how to do a nature trail. So he got this nature trail started in 1974 about. And he got 2 summer youth camps to help clear the path so that by the time the museums were ready to open, he was headed in good shape. And it's only really a typical, appropriate way to name our nature trail the Don Berryhill Nature Trail. Now, the mayor was supposed to be presenting this lovely proclamation, but he couldn't come. So they told me that I could be on the program and hand it to him. If you would just stand up, I'm not going to go into any other tales I have, but I do have pictures in the book that I wrote on the 2 museums, the unusual museums, that shows the earliest 2 student groups that were helping to clear the way, and Don Berryhill's picture is right there, and I'm going to have it on a table out there so that if you want to look at the way Don and his students looked, then look for it out there near where the registration is. Thank you, Don, for letting us name this for you and for all you have done to help us to have a wonderful Don Berryhill Nature Trail.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Clark. I really appreciate the kind comments. I really appreciate the kind comments, and I'm deeply honored, and I don't know how to be humble. I wish I knew, but I'm grateful, very grateful for all of you who've got out of your good warm bed and come to sit here for 20 or 30 minutes. Thanks again. I did start with Dr. Woodard in '67, and we worked together for like 35, 40 years. And we did build this nature trail out here originally back in the 70s with a program called YCC, Youth Conservation Corps. And I'm old enough to remember another CCC program that also employed people who needed work. Well, these kids were involved in YCC. We had a half a day of work and a half a day of environmental education. We took those kids everywhere. As you heard, the rocks in Broxton, the beach, the marsh, the dunes, the prairies, we took them to the rivers, we took them to Laura Walker Lake, and certainly out in the Okefenokee. In the Okefenokee, they actually dug a lake. Where we built a boardwalk, we didn't have any water. The kids jumped right in there and dug out a lake. And one day we came to work and they all got their tools and jumped in the water, and somebody said, "Gator!" Like popcorn, they jumped back out of there. They jumped back out. So we had to catch the gator and take him away, put him down, and took him off about a mile away in the swamp. Lots of beautiful experiences, and lots of people have come through these programs. One young man, his name is Nick Wiley from Brantley County, is today the chief commissioner of Freshwater and Wildlife Commission for the state of Florida. He is the chief, but he started right here, probably right here, helping to build some of this. Today I am just, I say again, I'm very honored and grateful that every one of you showed up and for the experiences I've had here. And I think it's all due to Dr. Woodard and the people he hired to work with. You know, a good leader always hires good people to do good work. Thank you again for coming, and I really appreciate all of this. Thank you.
Okay, what we'd like to do now, if y'all can, is the nature trail is actually over here to your left, and we have a sign that we're going to unveil for Mr. Berryhill. It includes a picture. So if y'all like to go over there, we'll do that. They kind of warm you up.